Welcome to the Father's Rights Playbook, a podcast designed to help men and fathers successfully navigate the family court system. I'm your host, Mark Reel Jr., and on today's show, we have California attorney David Pisarra. What is going on, David? How are we doing today?
I'm great, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. And really not to waste any time, we'll go ahead and we'll hop right in. We're going to talk about domestic violence today. But before we do that, what I want you to do, or I want to ask you is to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're at.
My pleasure. I've been a family lawyer for 24 years now, fighting for dads. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. It's been a bit of a brutal bashing over the years, particularly when we get into the domestic violence stuff. So one of the things I've done is I'm creating a union of dads, sort of an emotional support place for dads, because one of the things I think they need is bonding that they don't have when a life gets blown up by a divorce or a breakup. They become very isolated in relationships, and they really need some place to find themselves, get the support to navigate these waters, which are just so unbelievably nasty.
Yeah, definitely. And for everyone out there watching or listening, David's been in this game. David's been doing this for a very, very long time, and someone that I have a ton of respect for. And so I'm really excited to hop in and talk about domestic violence. So we were joking before we went live that between the two of our firms, we probably defend more restraining orders than just about anyone else in the state of California. So for the viewers, can you explain the domestic violence restraining order process in California and really what the laws are?
Sure. The process is really very expedited. It's real simple. You when you want to get a restraining order, you fill out the forms and you make a whole bunch of allegations about how you're being abused. And in the state of California, we have gone from the bad old days of, you have to be physically abused and bruising and maybe an O.J. Simpson kind of situation, to the other extreme, or right now where we're at, pretty much well, they yelled at me, so I'm uncomfortable and I'm afraid that they're going to get worse. So take them out of my life, take away their constitutional rights, take away their kids, make them a supervised visitation. And they never get to see their kids again. And that's pretty much all on just fears. And judges, because they're judges and they're scared for their own careers, because they don't want to be the one that lets the next O.J. Simpson off, pretty much rubber stamp on the temporary restraining order, which is it's done on a declaration. It's done for 21 days, maybe up to 25. And then you got to actually go prove stuff up. But that first 3 weeks, which is all based on just, well, I'm really afraid, the fear thing is what gets most guys. I never hit her. I don't know how many times I've heard that, but if I had $1 for every one, I'd have a big ass house down in Rancho Palos Verdes. Let me tell you.
Yes.
And I bet you've heard it a lot too, because I'm looking at you oh yeah. But what men don't really understand is what little evidence it requires to get a restraining order, a temporary restraining order issued. And that is,
let's talk about that.
I'm afraid.
So what is domestic violence? So that's the biggest misconception that I get. Hey, I never hit her. I've never touched her. I've never done anything. I think, what was it? 2020, we had coercive control added to the statutory language. I mean,
which no one knows what the hell that is.
Yeah, I still can't. I mean, so you have all these things. I mean, I call them jokingly. I mean, it's a serious issue, but you have these mean text domestic violence restraining orders. Shot off a few mean texts when the kids were being withheld, or she was just being a piece of shit. Let's just be honest. And she runs to the court, trumps up some allegations, and then the burden of proof. So it's not nothing. All guys come, hey, she can't prove it. She can't do this. Well, preponderance of the evidence is 50% in one feather. That's all they need. And on top of that, you went down this road. It's what happens? So a judge, if you're in a judge's chair, if you grant the restraining order and it was iffy, well, you're protected, you're covered. Nothing bad's going to happen. But you end up on the front page of the paper, your name ends up on the news if you deny a restraining order and then someone goes out and kills someone.
Right.
So it's Yeah, and so I mean that segues in, and I think the number one mistake I see men make is they don't understand what actually constitutes domestic violence in California. I don't think it's
Right.
right, but what other mistakes do you see? What mistakes do you see men make, or what do you wish those men who called in, sat in your office, ask you questions when they've already had that temporary restraining order granted? What do you wish they knew?
So, 10 days in to a temporary restraining order, what generally happens is this: guy's going to be sitting at home. It's going to be 11 o'clock at night. There's going to be a text from her. Hey, yep. What are you doing? Want to come over? And it's that late night booty call. And he's like, she's talking to me again. I can get her back. I can fix this. I know how to, I'll just give her what she wants and then I'll get what I want. And he's like, but wait, my lawyer said there's a restraining order. Don't talk to her. It's okay. I won't call the cops on you. I promise. And he goes over. They do what they're going to do. And maybe she calls the cops on him when it doesn't go the way that he wants it to go. And maybe she decides to like play a little like switch him up. And all of a sudden he's now violated. Or we wait and we go all the way to the actual hearing. And the judge asks that question. So is the restrained party violated the restraining order? And her lawyer pipes up with, yes, he has. Here are the texts. And you're sunk because now you violated. And you're like, but she said he wouldn't. And it's like, dude, I don't care. Like, I don't care what she promised.
Violation of the temporary restraining order is grounds
Don't
to
do
grant
it.
the permanent.
Yes. And it's like, oh my God, dude, you were so set up. And, but she said, and I don't care what she said. Like, at what point are you going to recognize that when she starts lying about you in the declaration, she's going to continue to lie? Like, why do you keep believing like she's going to start telling the truth when she's proven herself to be a liar? I just
Yeah,
don't get it. But that's the one
definitely,
that
definitely.
frustrates the heck out of me because I see it happen time and time again.
I think for me, the first one is, and this goes across all of family law, is the number of guys who call in and ask for help, and it's 7 days before their first hearing. They're already in default. Hey, I have a hearing in 2 days. With restraining orders, you mentioned that process moves so quickly. That
Yeah.
process, snap of a finger. They only have to serve you a week in advance.
Right.
And the guy will call us and like, hey, I want this to move forward. So I think mine is just the fact that instead of taking control and let's say you get served right away, instead of allowing your attorney to go out, dig up information, maybe do a deposition if necessary, you wait until you absolutely have to do something, and then your trial becomes even more he said she said because we can't go out and find that information to fight it.
Right.
And
Right.
I'll get an example we've had here, and I won't tell the exact kind of facts of the case, but we had a guy. He did what he was supposed to do. As soon as he got served, he calls, he retains us. We get the process started, and we end up digging in, and through kind of random series of events of us trying to find information, the same picture of her breasts that she put on the declaration that were bruises, we found messages in a joint Facebook account that she sent to another man telling him they were hickeys from him.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'll say this, and it was one of the other attorneys in the office that handled it. But I was like, I mean, we didn't have to put it on an exhibit list, anything else. We were excited because we're going to play it up. We're going to have her talk all about this picture, and then boom, there in HD on the TV in the courtroom is just going to be a picture of her boobs and the messages
Right.
of her flirting with another guy saying you gave me hickeys.
Yeah.
Um, but that one settled out because that's some of the
I'm
obvious ones.
surprised.
Those are the easy ones.
Yeah. Yeah. The ones that are hard are when it's the he pushed me, or I'm afraid of him, or he's yelling a lot, or it's the financial abuse. That's a big one. That's just like, how do you
Yeah,
prove that? Like, come on. It's the, oh, we put all of our money into one pot and he just paid all the bills. I don't know what anything costs, and I don't know how much money we have, and he's controlling me, and he demands sex from me in order to get my bills paid, and it's just the he said, she said.
Or the best ones are the men who make good money and the
Yeah.
women who run their own businesses,
Oh,
where there's $30,000 in inventory of random knickknacks, but they say they've lost money for the past 10 years because husband for those 10 years let her go out and play business, not
yep.
actually needing her to make money. So I mean that's
True.
I always tell guys the hardest thing to prove is that something didn't happen, because
Right.
there's no evidence that it did or no evidence that it didn't happen.
Exactly.
In my opinion, I mean, and I want your opinion on this. It's like 95% of domestic violence restraining order hearings are about credibility. Who does the judge believe more? Because a lot of times there's really not enough evidence on either side, but the judge has to pick one side.
I think that that's really true. I think that this is where women have an advantage because they play on their emotions and they cry. And men don't want to go into court and say what's really going on. Like, I don't know about you, but like most of my guys, when we get into it and I start doing the research, they're all like, she's been hitting me the whole time. I'm like, then why haven't you said anything? Why haven't you done anything?
Yeah.
Well, she couldn't really hurt me. Okay. Well, just because she couldn't really hurt you doesn't mean it wasn't abuse.
Two peas in a pod. People end up
Right.
dating and procreating with someone that is similar to them, or at least in their social circles.
So,
So,
so that's the
yeah.
perfect segue into my coffee cup, which I don't know if you can read it.
Uh huh.
Mother Teresa didn't marry the devil.
Yeah.
How many times do
Yeah.
we say that a week?
Hey, I'll tell you this. My favorite in court moment was we had a client who phenomenal human being, and he had a past,
Yeah.
and he had cleaned himself up, everything, and it had been several years. Other attorney is he's a terrible human. He's this, he's that. He's done all of these things. He's been in federal prison. And I literally just slowly raised my hand. It was a judge we're very familiar with in front of daily. And I was like, Your Honor, they met in rehab. And you see the judge just on the bench slowly pan to the other attorney, and was like, I don't want to see you guys. Go out in the hallway and figure something out. If not, dad gets custody.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I think that's a challenge a lot of dads deal with, especially with the DV process, is that they feel like they have to be perfect. And in reality, if the relationship's on the rocks, things happen. And I mean, my opinion, unfortunately, with the way the laws are written in California, if any relationship, probably even a solid relationship, you could probably find things that the court could find were domestic violence.
What's going on, guys? It is Mark Real Jr., the father's rights attorney, and on August 7th, I am releasing my first book, The Father's Rights Playbook. My introduction to family law was my own family law case, and going through the family court system. And in doing that, my eyes were open to the injustices that occur and the trials and tribulations that fathers are put through. So it was a personal experience, and then my eyes were open to this broad systemic issue, which has inspired me to build this firm and now write this book.
These days, like the definition is so freaking wide. You could land like 3 777s side by side. It's insane what you can get through.
Yeah, 100%. And so
And
along those lines, and really with what we a lot of times deal with, and every single day, it's, hey, she's making these false allegations. Let's talk about that. So guy comes in, and it truly is a he said, she said situation where it's going to be who's the most credible. How do we deal with false allegations, or how do you like dealing with false allegations where there's really no evidence on either side?
that's the hardest, most slippery thing to do. And it's really like you almost have to create character witness list and try and prove who your guy really is and show that the allegations are just on their face kind of BS by showing everything around it. You have to show the absence of it by showing everything around it. So, like, I've
Yeah.
got a case going to trial on Thursday next week, she's coming in and claiming that, oh, he's physically abusive. Oh, he's a drug addict. Oh, he's a negligent person. Oh, he shouldn't be allowed custody of his kid because, as she put it, I don't want my baby going with, and this is a direct quote, some man. I'm like, that's the father of your kid. You picked him and you guys were engaged. You remember that? Like, okay, whatever. So the way in which we're proving like he's not violent is, oh, he happens to be former military. Oh, he gets drug tested for his job every 2 weeks. Oh, he's got all of these things that line up that contradict her statements. And the way we do it is by showing that, by creating a picture of who he is as a real person, so that the judge can see that, like, she can claim he's a drug addict, but drug addicts don't generally work 80-hour work weeks.
You don't have clearance as a drug addict. You don't keep your clearance as a drug addict.
You definitely don't keep your clearance.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece that has to be drilled through men's heads when they're in these situations. Is it becomes a credibility contest. And for me, it starts out with, you have to be brutally honest with your attorney. We can deal with bad facts, but given the nature of domestic violence hearings, if there was a situation 5 years ago where you spiked her phone against a wall and broke it, and there's pictures or proof of it or anything like that, we need to know, because if that comes in and we're unaware of it and that blindsides us at hearing, that's not a good look. You're playing for 50.1%. Like, you're not playing for a death blow here.
100%. And that's probably one of the biggest things that men don't do, is they have a real hard time like owning up to their bad behavior with their lawyer, which I find really ironic, because like the whole point of us is to be an open, safe space. Like whatever you've done, I've heard it. And I tell this joke, like, there's only one thing I haven't heard, and it involves a goat. And if you've done that one thing with a goat, I kind of want to hear that story. Like, everything else I've heard, like, dude, like, whatever your weirdness is, whether you've murdered somebody, I've heard that. Like, open up, tell me the truth.
Yeah, I think that ties back into the fact it takes men time to even go to an attorney, even get the process started. Is that they don't want to open up, and then they open up with just what they want to tell us. I'll tell you this: the best clients and the easiest clients to fight for with these restraining orders are typically the executives and the higher functioning people that have to work with lawyers in their professional career. I'm sure you've had it where you have C-suite executives or wealthy people, and they're like, hey, so they just tell us to be honest with our attorney. I did cocaine for this period of time. I did this. This definitely happened. All right, we can work with this. You're human. Right. What we can't work with is the guy who wants to hide all the bad stuff from us. And guess what? The other attorney is going to bring it all out in court. You might as well let us know beforehand.
Right. My personal favorite are Marines. Like if you come into my office, you should say, like, I'm a Marine. I'm like, I'm discounting your bill 10% just because it's going to be easy to work with you. They know how to take direction. They follow orders. I ask a question, they answer it fully. Those are my favorites.
Yeah, I would say that, and this is so terrible to say, but it's part of the way the laws are written. Probably 15 to 20% of restraining orders, permanent restraining orders that get granted, I feel like could have been avoided if the guy would have been honest from day one. Because the gotcha moments, moments on the stand, that's the hardest piece. Is it makes you look so bad when your attorney sitting there like, I've never heard of that one, and trying to come up with a something on the fly to rationalize this or put it out there. Because one of my favorite things, I tell all guys, the 8 Mile strategy. We'll go out there, and 8 Mile in his last rap battle in the movie comes out and he lists off all the negative things about himself. If we go out there and we say, like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've dealt with in the past, these things have happened, all of a sudden it takes some wind out of the sails of opposing counsel and credibility. Okay, he came out and he was willing to say these things, willing to admit these things ahead of time. It wasn't something that had to be pulled out of him. It's not something that now opposing counsel can frame. Like, it's just out there.
And the other part of that, from my perspective, is if that stuff is proven over a history, if there's like background of that, if she knew about that before they got into the relationship, or it's all been disclosed during the relationship, there becomes that like, well, lady, you picked him. Like, if you knew all this stuff about going in, that's definitely a subconscious factor, I think, on the judge's side.
And well, I think it's very true. I mean, I've had just this year had a judge not even subconsciously factor that in. Unfortunately, it went against our client. Mom was a drug addict. Mom almost lost her life, and she ended up losing part of her arm because of shooting up, and she was a mess. Well, they had known each other for a decade. They had been in a relationship for 5 years, break up for a couple years. She went out and had kids with a couple other guys. Then they get back together. And we tell her, hey, she can't pass a drug test right now. She just had part of her arm cut off because of her shooting up heroin. And the judge looks at me and is like, oh, so your client knew about all this stuff. Your client knew that she had lost her other 2 kids. And now you want me to give him the benefit of the doubt. He knew what he signed up for. If something happens moving forward, we can talk about it, but we're not going to talk about the past.
Yeah. Yeah, it does cut both ways. That's certainly true.
Yeah. So as we go to wrap up here, I want to give you do so much great work, and I know you have resources for those men maybe that can't afford an attorney, who needs some help. So what projects you got going on right now?
So the big one I've got is called Dad's Law School, and it's dadslawschool.com. And at dadslawschool.com, we've got courses for men. There's Dad's Action Pack, which is, okay, you've got a hearing in like 2 weeks and you can't come up with a big fat retainer for lawyers, but you have to file a declaration. You have to explain to the judge what's going on. I walk you through the process over the course of 90 minutes of what needs to go in there, how to gather that information, and then why you put it in there. And then the biggest thing in this course is, most people are scared of public speaking. So I've got a public speaking piece in there to help coach you through that moment when you have to like stand there and look at the judge and like you're freaking out and you don't know what's going to happen. It's like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Here's how you handle that from a speaking perspective. And then the other big course I've got is one for contempt. So you're down the road, you've got your court orders, and mom's withholding the kid, not playing nice. How do you then enforce the court orders? And that's the contempt process, which most people are just, she's in contempt. Yeah, well, now what are you going to do about it? So this course is designed to help you do something about it. So
awesome,
that's the 2 courses I've got at Dad's Law School.
Awesome. And so where can they find those resources?
They go to dadslawschool.com and start there.
Awesome. Well, I've actually seen part of that, the Dad's Action Pack, and went through that. It really is some great content for dads who, like you said, you're in a pinch, you need something, you need to know the basics, you need to know what you're getting yourself into. It can be a really, really valuable resource. On the other side of things, if they are looking to retain you, they are looking for a lawyer, where can they find you with that?
That one's really easy. That's mensfamilylaw.com. That's the easiest place to find me. You just go to mensfamilylaw.com.
Awesome. And David's in Southern California, just like I am. So as we wrap up here, I want to thank you for spending some time with us, talking about a very important topic in domestic violence. Do you have any words of wisdom, anything you'd like to leave the men and fathers that are watching or listening?
Yeah, I do. I've got a TikTok channel, and my tagline on that is always like, and remember, you're freaking awesome. And the thing that I want dads to remember is that they're really important, and they need to remember that. And they're not told that often enough by society. So remember, you're freaking awesome.
Thank you. I like that. That's really, really good. Thank you again for your time this morning. And we'll see all of our viewers and guests next time on the Father's Rights Playbook.
Thanks, Mark.